Investing past the age of 30, kind of overrated. Time to think like an investor. Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you're new here, one thing you'll understand about me is that I love this idea of compound interest. It never ceases to amaze me. And you might be thinking,
wow, another guy just talking about compound interest again. Wow, that's really insightful.
But seriously, every single time I revisit this concept, it blows my mind. And if you're not really sure what compounding interest is, it's essentially this idea of cumulative advantage. And what I just did there, I guess, is I just took something simple and made it complex. So let me redo this. What compound interest is it's when we earn money on some sort of investment, and that now gives us a larger amount of money, and now we have more money to invest. So if we go and invest that again, we can earn an even larger amount of money, and it kind of snowballs, right? It's like if you can imagine pushing a snowball down a massive hill. The bigger it gets, the more snow it can collect, and it's like this exponential growth. It just continues to grow more and more and more as it grows. And now here's the interesting thing is, compounding, for me, in my experience, does not just apply to investing or interest or money. What I found is that, here's a funny example. Let's say you move to a new city and you know absolutely nobody, and maybe you have a goal of maybe making some friends every now and then and actually having people you can talk to and that sort of thing. Well, getting that first friend is probably really difficult. But, once you actually get yourself out there and make that first friend, maybe they introduce you to a group of 5 friends, and now you have 5. And then maybe those 5 friends can introduce you to 5 other friends, and now you have 5 times 5. And another way that I'm actually finding this applies is in YouTube, because at first, it took months to get 100 subscribers, and now we're getting subscribers hand over fist kind of every single day. And that reminds me, if you haven't subscribed, please contribute to my compounding by hitting that subscribe button below and supporting the channel. I appreciate that you guys are here. But anyways, another way that compounding applies was with my career, and I started taking clients as an investment advisor. Getting those first few clients was absolutely miserable. It was so difficult. It was way out of my comfort zone. I was red in the face trying to make phone calls. It was absolutely horrible. But, fast forward 3 or 4 or 5 years later, 5 years later, it's only started to kind of get easy now. It's referrals come in and existing clients send other people in, and it's almost like we now have too many clients and we have more than we know what to do with. And that's a good problem. But all this being said, there's something to be mentioned. There's something to be said for this idea of putting in a ton of work up front, whether it's in building your network or building your career or building your investments. Putting a ton of work up front so that kind of starts moving for you like a little machine. It's like you're trying to push a rock down a hill, and all you really have to do is get this boulder started. But once you get it started, this thing's gonna just start tumbling on its own. And this is exactly where my mind went when I started to think, okay, can't I just do that for my investments? This whole idea of, okay, I went as hard as I could in my career for the first 5 years, and now it's at the point where it's kind of just easy. Can I do that with investing? Is there a way that maybe I can just stop investing, maybe at age 30, for instance, and see where that gets me? And it led me to some pretty insane conclusions. And I kind of want to blow your guys' mind today with a concept I've discovered when it comes to compounding interest. And I'm going to pull up a calculator here. It's a time value of money calculator. It's kind of like the backbone of financial decision making, is knowing how to use one of these calculators. It's not that complex. It's really easy. I want to take you guys through it and show you some of the things I discovered. So here we are, like I said, with the time value of money calculator, and it's really not that difficult. We think about the present value. We're just putting in some inputs. The present value, what do we have to start with in investing? What do we have to start with today? And then the payments tab is where we put in how much money am I going to contribute to this on a regular basis? What am I going to do month after month or year after year? Future value helps us calculate, well, what's this investment going to be worth in the future? And the annual rate in a percentage term is what is the rate of return on the investment? And lastly, the number of periods, or the amount of time that we have to do this. This is all going to make a ton of sense when I start plucking some numbers in here. This is what was mind-blowing to me. Let's take a pretty simple example that we can probably all understand. I was going to say vibe with. That's the cheesiest thing. Let's take an example we can all empathize with. Let's say you're someone who is around the age of 20 years old. Maybe you're not, but let's just think about this, okay? We start with $0. So that's all we have to invest. But what we're going to do is we're going to add $500 to our investments every single month, okay? That's reasonable. And 500 times 12, if you don't know, is 6,000. So do the math if you don't believe me. It's quite simple. Anyways, So we now have negative 6,000 popped in here, and the reason we do that, because on a financial calculator, just for your purposes, a negative means that we're investing, we're putting money into something. Now, I'm not going to fill out this future value part because that's what we're trying to calculate, but we'll go to the interest rate, okay? This is where we have to make some assumptions because we don't really know what interest rate or rate of return we're going to get in the future, but we can use the past as a guide. And since 1926, I believe it was, over about almost 100 years, stocks have achieved about a 9 to 11% rate of return, depending how you measure. Let's be conservative, and we'll say 8%. And now the number of periods is like how long are we investing this money for? So let's say we have somebody who does this for 10 years, from the age of 20 to the age of 30. What does that get us, okay? We're just gonna say we invest from 20 to 30. And we'll turn this to annual. This person ends up with $87,000, okay? That's pretty cool. So 87,000 bucks, am I right? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that 87,000 and invest it at age 30 and never add to our investments again, okay? That's a really interesting idea. We're never gonna add to them again. We're just gonna go till 30. And for those of you who really hate the idea of saving money or putting money away, this is great because you only have to do it for 10 years and then you never have to think about it again. So what I'm gonna do now is take this 86,000 number and I'm literally just gonna put it up here in the present value instead. And bear with me while I work through this because now we're assuming we're 30 years old and our payments, we're not putting anything in anymore. That's zero, right? We're putting nothing in. And our future value is what we're trying to solve for. But now that we are 30, we want to probably invest till retirement age of about, let's say 65. And for the number of periods, essentially what we're doing is we're now going to invest this until retirement age. So from 30 until 65. So how many years is that? That is 35 years, right? So when I hit the future value button, it's gonna tell us how much money you would end up with if you saved 500 bucks a month from 20 to 30 and then never thought about investing ever again. Well, we end up with 1.285, we could even round it up, $1.3 million. That's pretty sweet, right? Because we've saved and we've put in some serious effort for the first 10 years of our career, let's say, and then we haven't even thought about it ever again. We've just let the investments do the work and let the compounding do the work. Now what I want to do is compare this to somebody, okay, who does the opposite. The other person decides, okay, I really don't want to invest from 20 to 30. It's not really front of mind. There's a lot of other things I'm thinking of doing. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna invest from 30 to 65, right? So we'll have to rejig the numbers a little bit here. So let's say they start with 0 at 35 and they're putting away that same amount we talked about before. They're gonna put away 500 a month or 6,000 per year. The future value, that's what we're gonna try to solve for. Keep the same rate of return. We're not gonna make any changes there. And now we're actually gonna also keep the number of periods the same. We're gonna go from 30 to 65, so 35 years. Where do we get in this scenario? Well, if I hit the future value button, we actually only end up with $1.03 million. Right? Like this is the craziest thing because what we find by doing the math is that someone who invests and goes hard from 20 to 30 and then never invests again actually ends up way ahead of somebody who starts at 30 and goes all the way until 65, like an extra 25 years. That's mental. So my thinking here was, okay, I've done a video in the past talking about my investment portfolio and I included some things like my stock market investments and a rental property that I had and the equity in that and some alternative investments and different things of the sort and how much I save per month. You can go watch that video if you like to get some backstory. But what if I plug my numbers into this and talk about how much I'm saving on a regular basis? And maybe what this means is I don't have to invest after 30. I would pride myself and pat myself on the back. I don't do that for many things because I don't deserve it. But for this, I think I do, is I started investing pretty young. And what that means is I've gotten to the point now where I have an investment portfolio, net of liabilities. Let's say you have a rental property minus the debt, right? Some investments, and all these other things have culminated in a portfolio that's about $150,000, and I contribute on average about $1,000 a month to it. So why don't we plug those numbers in and see what would happen to me if I stopped investing at 30? And maybe it makes a case that investing after 30 is kind of overrated. So first things first, pretty simple. Let's put in the present value, which we'll call around $150,000. And again, we put a negative sign there. And instead of saving $500 a month, I said I'm saving about $1,000 a month in various ways. Now, if we get a 8% rate of return and do that from now, I'm 25 right now, we do that for 5 more years, where does that get me? Well, I get to about $291,000 at the age of 30 if nothing else changes, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is put that 291,000 number right in here in terms of our present value. Let's assume I'm 30 now, and I'm gonna start doing this. I'm done investing. I'm not gonna contribute any more whatsoever. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to invest that until I'm 65. So we're gonna keep that same rate of return and do this from 30 to 65, as I've said a trillion times now. So we do this for 35 years, and I end up at $4.3 million. That's insane. That is more than anyone needs. Like that is crazy. And to illustrate really how much money that is, if I were to just keep that invested and try to live off of that, you know, it's as simple as doing this one more time. I'm gonna paste this here as my present value. Let's assume I'm 65 now, right? Or I could probably even retire early on that amount. That's a lot. And what I'm gonna do now is I'll solve for the payment. How much could I take out of this on a yearly basis for my income? So we'll say the future value is 0 because we're gonna spend it down to 0 by the time I die. And who knows, I've done a lot of stupid things in my life and I'm not the healthiest person, so I would be very happy if I got to 90. So we'll say, you know, we go from age 65 to 90, which would be 25 years. I think my math is right there. But one thing we need to know is that if I'm going to be retired, I don't want to be taking as much risk with my investments as I would if I was a young person. So, you know, we've all heard of this thing of risk and reward, right? If I want lower risk, I'm going to get a lower reward. So I might adjust my interest rate down to something like 4% just to make it a little more conservative. Now, when I hit the payment button, it'll tell me what this spits out annually in terms of an income. And it spits out $275,000 every single year in retirement. You know, as long as you're not obsessed with status items like I am in terms of like buying a Lamborghini and taking really cool vacations, no one in the world needs that much money. That is way more than anyone could need to make sure the bills are paid and have a good life and to be generous and all those sorts of things. So anyways, guys, I've really hammered in on the numbers here today. I know it might be a little confusing and I hope you were able to go through this with me and understand, but what I'm trying to get across here is something very fascinating about compound interest, and it's that time. Those initial 10 years matter so much more than anything else, and that is the greatest case to start investing as a young person and to start getting involved early, because time really is your ally. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening to me rant today about this scenario and how I'm thinking, you know what, investing after 30, yeah, I'm not so sure that it's all that it's cracked up to be. Maybe we don't have to do it, but hey, best of both worlds. Why not just do both? At the end of the day, that's probably what I'll end up doing. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you got any value whatsoever, make sure to hit that like button below, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Until next time.